Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Foxhole holiday stream. My name is Mark, also known as Markfoot, and we also have. You want to introduce yourself, Alkas?
Yeah, I'm Alkas. You just introduced me, but I think you guys know me as Nuba, one of the game designers and programmers like Mark.
Cool. Yeah. So first, before we get started, for anyone that's new to watching the stream, this is a very different format from what we usually have. We usually have a much nicer setup at the studio, and we have Matt, our resident streaming expert, to set everything up and to make everything nice. So if there's anything wrong with the stream, please bear with us and let us know in the chat. Because this is my first time setting this up, right? And there could be a lot of things that are going to go wrong, but hopefully it'll hold together for the next hour or so.
Nobody's screaming in Twitch chat yet,
Okay,
so that's good.
so
Nothing is.
so far so
Hopefully.
good.
Hopefully it's not
But
terrible.
yeah, just to let you guys know, I think this dev stream will be a little different than usual, and it'll be kind of cool because you guys see me a lot, but for Outcast, you don't really get to talk to him a lot, and him and myself, we are responsible for a lot of the game design in Foxhole, and sort of like uh, the high level decision making that happens on the project. So if you want to blame someone for something that's wrong, you have the guy to blame now, or you have the two guys to blame now. So I think this is kind of like a rare opportunity that you get to talk to him, on top of just talking to me. So I think this is gonna be exciting, and I think before we actually get started, I originally didn't plan to do. So usually on our streams we go through the latest community highlights post, and we sort of just run through some of the cool stuff that's being made from the community. And I wasn't planning on doing that, but yesterday I saw the post, and there was just that post was really amazing. There was like so much
Yeah,
amazing art that was made from the community, made from you guys, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I just really wanted to highlight a few things that I thought was really really cool. So I'm just gonna switch to that right now. And I really liked the holiday themed art that was shown. It just totally blew me away. Like if a year
the
ago,
production qualities have like it's crazy.
the production
Somebody told me
quality.
like this is for a game that like you're gonna be working on. Like holy crap, what?
Yeah, exactly. It's
That's really
just
cool.
a year ago we were already seeing art coming out of the community, and that was when there was only like 100 people playing the game on Saturday, and the rest of the week there was like 5 people playing the game. And things have just gotten so much better. We say this all the time. We sound like a broken record, but it just every time I see the community highlights post, it blows me away. Like it doesn't seem like this is the kind of stuff that we should be seeing for the current size of the game, and it's just it just kind of really shows me that the community in almost every way is much larger than the game itself. And
Yeah.
I was just really happy last night when I was looking at this post, and it was just it's really exciting. I really liked this one here from Lurkis, the two sides stopping to to
To
uh,
exchange gifts. Yeah.
exchange gifts with each other, and it's just sort of I don't know, it's really cool. And there was just so much other stuff in this post. You guys can check it out on foxholegame.com. And there was one more thing I wanted to highlight that was really cool, um, which was, well, there were two more things. I thought this was really cool. So I Saw Bear has been a video creator that creates videos highlighting changes from the updates for Foxhole, and he's been doing it for like a year now. And I think it's so cool that after all this time, he finally got a fan art piece of his own. And I just thought I thought it was kind of a long overdue thing, and I'm really glad that we were finally able to see this, because he deserves this kind of fan art. His videos are really good.
If I could make fan art, I'd make fan art for I Saw Bear.
Exactly.
Yes.
And there was one more thing I want to highlight that I thought was really cool, which was this. This was really awesome. It's sort of like a reskinning of Foxhole, and
Right.
sort of visualizing how that will look. And I thought that was always cool because we always hope that, in the long run, at our studio, that we'd be able to work on multiple type of games that are like Foxhole. We're talking like really far in the future. So I thought this was cool that some of you guys feel the same way. Like, what would Foxhole be like if, there was a different version of it that took place in the Old West, or, perhaps even if it wasn't a different title, but if we allow players to make a mod for the game, that what they could mod the game into, right? Like players running supply lines with a horse and carriage. I thought would be
Yeah.
kind of cool, right? So, um,
Like towns being built up and then like shootouts and stuff. That'd be
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
sweet.
exactly. I thought that would be cool. Anyways, so I didn't want to spend too much time on that, but make
Yeah.
sure you go and check out that post. It's really cool, and I think it's one of the best posts of the year. I can't wait to see what happens in the new year, right?
Yeah, it's an awesome community highlights post to end the year with. It's definitely a high note. So
Yeah.
thanks
Um,
for everybody.
yeah. Thanks for all the amazing artwork and amazing videos and fiction and everything else. Um, and I guess moving on. So a lot of times, like I said earlier, people don't get to hear from you, Outcasts, and um, I guess some cool stuff that a couple of questions I guess I thought would be fun to ask you, and sort of I'll also ask myself. I guess the first one here is just because it's the end of the year, I thought it'd be appropriate to ask a couple of these questions, sort of do like a review of 2017. And I guess if I had to ask you, what do you feel went right and wrong in 2017 with respect to the development of Foxhole?
Um, yeah, 2017 has been crazy. I mean, we've been working on the game for a long time, but 2017, we saw the actual early access launch and everything, and I think the greatest thing about Foxhole, I think the you know we're I think that the awesomest thing about Foxhole is the community, right? And it's I think it's been great, like just working with the community, listening to the community, just it fuels us too, right? Like seeing other people get excited about this is excellent motivational fuel for keeping at it. And I think that's, if there's one thing we did right, I'd like to think that it's keeping in touch with the community, listening to the community. um so yeah, it's just and seeing and you see these people that are we had a vision, and then you get these people from the community that are excited for that vision. They kind of see like what we're trying to go for. They're like, yeah, we know this is just kind of like the first glimmer. So screw all the little bugs and stuff. Like let's focus on the what makes Foxhole unique. And seeing that, like being able to kind of like recognizing that, like, oh shit, like people can actually you know connect with us in that vision, and be able to contribute. And then there's extra, like stuff to bounce ideas, all these hundreds, thousands of people to bounce ideas off of, which is really amazing. So um
That's
yeah, how
cool.
about you?
Um, I guess in terms of what went right, but it's also related to some stuff that maybe I felt went wrong. I I do feel like the early access launch was one thing that went right, just because of how intense and how many things can possibly go wrong with such a launch. That even though there were some mistakes we made, perhaps as a
Yeah.
result of the early access launch, it was very scary, right? And now we can
Mhm.
kind of, we've talked about it before, but now it's been so long that we can talk about it more as oh haha, do you remember when we launched and how scary it was, and not like we were shitting in our pants for like
Oh man, yeah. Like it
for
was kind of like, oh
for like
my
a
god,
few
like it
weeks,
was
and like at the time like we
definitely
were,
felt like, putting all your chips down at the casino and being like, all right, let's go for it.
yeah, it
And
was
like
very,
watching the thing like roll, the ball
it
jump around. You're
was
like, oh,
yeah, no, exactly, it was a very it was very nerve wracking time, and it was a little bit of a make it or break it type of moment.
hmm,
I'm sure if things like didn't go our way, we still would have kept trying, but it would have been much more difficult. And we had been working on the project for a year and a half, and we had given everything away for free. So in a lot of cases for these types of games, the developers don't like to give things away for free because they want to make sure that they have a marketing launch, a really strong marketing launch where they've kind of like hidden the game away from people and they want to surprise them. But for us, we were really focusing on wanting to make the game good first and foremost, so we decided to give the game away for free, so to make sure it can be fully
yeah.
tested. There was a lot of risks there because we were told not to do that, right? Like we were told,
Yeah, not a lot of games do that, and it's I'm really happy that we were able to kind of like execute on that plan. It's
yeah,
like focus on community, focus on like getting excited about the game. Like don't worry about everything else for now, and
yeah, like
somehow like just by doing what we actually would enjoy, it just kind of worked out. Like oh wow, that's you can't ask for more than that.
no, absolutely. And I guess you didn't really answer the second part of the question, Alkas, which is the harder one, which was, what do you think went wrong, right? What do you
Uh,
think we could have done better? Is sort of um, the glass half full side of that question.
you could throw a controversial answer to that and say we listened to the community too much and we focused on like small things sometimes. But no, like it's I think stuff that went wrong. We did sometimes I think lose focus a little bit in the just like we servers are like catching fire, like oh my, like suddenly there's like a user spike, or there's this, there's that, how we're gonna make, oh like we gotta fire up servers, we gotta do this, we gotta do that, and then you kind of like uh, you get caught up in the day-to-day like urgent small stuff, and then sometimes you forget to like take a break and like look at the horizon, right?
Yeah,
And yeah, I think we've the two of us have chatted long about that, how you find what you are really good at doing, and then you kind of focus on that, and then the hard problems kind of take a backseat. And you're like, oh, I hope that we figure those out. But um,
yeah, no, that's
yeah,
exactly it, and I agree with you 100%. And we do talk about this all the time. Is is that making making something like Foxhole and making it what it needs to be is a very treacherous path, and I think that there's a lot of distraction sometimes, and I think perhaps as good as the early access launch was, it was a bit of a distraction in the sense that we suddenly got this influx of so many players, and we ended up going into like a reactionary mode, right?
uh-huh.
We were reacting to all these problems, but these weren't important problems. And it sounds bad to say that, but in the long run, in the grand scheme of like the next 3 years, like it doesn't necessarily matter that we're not handling all these requests from these new 4,000 users that are asking for like community servers and are asking for like fixing small little things like maybe with the vote kick system, and like
It's hard though, like
and
because like when you're in it, you just everything feels so important. You're like, oh man, like community service is like we gotta like really prioritize that. Which
right,
in some ways, there's like the boot camp people. There's like there are some people that make really good use of the community servers, right? There's
Right. No,
the
absolutely.
community events that come from it. Those
Yeah.
are invaluable, right? So it's hard to be like, oh no, like don't prioritize that right
Right.
now. And it's at the moment it just seems so important, right? Which and it is, but you just got to be like, okay, like just
I mean,
at
let's not
least
like
like
beat around the bush. Like,
yeah.
what we really want to say is that we should have been working on that world conquest, right?
Mm.
Like let's just kind of be perfectly honest with each other. Is that
Right.
that's the thing that we talked about all the time, that it isn't a regret. It's more of like, it's a we learned a lesson to want to focus on the right things. We should have been focusing on world conquest right away, and
Mm.
and we should have been going full throttle on that, and had launched something in fall, right? But we and this might not turn out to be a bad thing in the end, because there's a
Mm.
lot of good things that have come from focusing on these other things. But things like the amphibious features, things like trying to get the server browser and like the community server localization, all these other things up to speed, even trying to like expand the team. I don't think that one was a waste of time, because I think having a larger team now and having these new team members on board that wasn't a waste of time, because now we're able to do so much more. So I think that was actually one of the
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
choices on there, right? But
Yeah.
but that stuff still took up so much time, and I think that it's really like I think I just wished we had, not had all these distractions, and we instead focused on world conquest more. But it doesn't matter now, because now we've taken a look back, and we know that's going to be the focus now, and there's going to be a lot of other things that we're going to be pushing aside for world conquest, even sometimes fixes to bugs or other small things. I guess not small is not the right word, but relatively small in the priority of
I
things.
mean, yeah,
Um,
just because just because we're working on world conquest doesn't mean we're not going to fix any bugs. But it's just I think we were so caught up in all the little bugs, all the little things, oh, a little polish here, a little polish there, that like and because world conquest is a very tough nut to crack, right? Like we're still struggling with like how we still have design problems that we kind of need to address with world conquest, and some of those will probably go live and people will be like, well, oh, wait a second, what's going on here? And we're gonna like, oh right, that's right, we still have to address that. So um,
yeah. So anyways,
it's tough, but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so long story short, a lot of good things happened in 2017, and we should have worked on World Conquest a bit sooner rather than later. But we are
At
where we
least
are,
we're back on track now.
and we're
So
back
that's
on track now.
at least
Yeah.
yeah.
So I guess really quickly, what were the most memorable moments in 2017 for you? We'll try to make this quick so we can move on to other things.
Well, obviously, the launch was great, and there's uh, I think you had some stuff written down too. But for me, every day it just keeps getting better and better. So I want to kind of be like, oh, like yesterday was the greatest. But like the the dev skirmishes were really fun. It's really fun jumping on with you guys. And half of you want to play with us, and half of you want to kick our ass, and we mostly get our asses kicked. So I think it goes to show that how much how dedicated you guys are when we can't even like do anything. So but they're really fun. The dev skirmishes are really fun. And I think one thing, the one war that I'm not gonna I'm gonna remember a bit is there was the Russian event, because it was it was kind of like it was hyped up, and it's like one the West versus the East, and it's everybody was so hardcore, and we had streamers set up. That was a really cool war, like just being able to listen to it, like I'm like in the subway, like just like trying to like listen into the stream, being like, oh, like they take like the town yet, like what's going on?
Yeah, it was really cool.
That was
I
really
think
cool. It was kind of like a glimmer of like what how exciting like a war can be, and like being able to like check up on a war even when you're not on your computer, right? Like that was really neat.
Yeah. I mean, there is one thing that I have to mention, is the festival when
Yeah.
the last weekly war, last quote unquote
Uh-huh.
weekly war, that festival that happened back in, I think, like April,
Yeah.
cause I was moving that day actually, and with half of my furniture moved in, I set up my laptop first and just started watching that festival because like my mind was blown. And that was the one weekly war where I was really busy that day and like I couldn't actually sit down and or I wasn't prepared to sit down and watch the whole thing. But I just dropped everything. Like I was half moved in and I just like watched that whole event and it was just
Yeah.
it was just crazy. And I messaged you Outcast. And I'm like, this is mind
Yeah.
blowing, right? So
It's like,
yeah,
what is happening
yeah.
right now?
So,
Yeah.
and like for those of you that don't know, we used to run these. Well, we still run the weekly events, but at the time, that particular variation of the weekly war, that was the last one we were running. So a bunch of clans got together and had a festival where they had a bunch of games, and it was really cool to see. It was really awesome. Anyways, I guess moving
Yeah.
on. Talking about One World a bit and next year, right?
Hmm.
Um, I guess like I guess we've been talking a lot about One World, and when I say talk a lot, I mean us. It's been we've been talking about it for like weeks and weeks, and it's been taking up so much of our time. And sometimes we feel like, hey, maybe we should go work on some other stuff. You know, maybe we should go fix some bugs, right? But
Hmm.
we know that this is the most important thing, and we know we need to be planning for this. And so we've been doing lots of planning, and I think a lot of stuff is going to change in Foxhole, and I don't know if everyone is going to be entirely comfortable with a lot of the changes that we're planning, but we
Probably including people on the team too.
probably including people on the team.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, if we're not comfortable with change, there's no way that Foxhole is going to get better. It's going to get stagnant. It's not going to be the thing that we all hope and dream that it's going to be without making some people uncomfortable, right? And I think one of the first things we've been talking about is the pacing of the wars, right? Like
Hmm.
I think things are going to slow down a whole lot.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, it might even slow down to the point where people might find it boring, and things might feel like a grind. But sometimes truly believe that you need to swing far in one direction first, see how it works out, and then fix it if it's boring or if it's too slow, right? So we might have to swing far in that direction, and we've done it before in the past. Like when we introduced
Yeah.
the static defenses, everyone hated it. Hated the pillboxes because they were really powerful, and we swung too
Right.
far in that direction. But we immediately fixed it in the following week, and ended up working like how it was intended. But if we
Hmm.
didn't do that, we wouldn't have known, right? And I think that's the thing that we have to be comfortable with is going into the unknown, right?
Hmm.
And and we're gonna be restructuring a lot of the maps, right? That's another thing we've been talking about, Alkas.
Yeah.
Because the way that a lot of the maps are right now is not supportive of what the one world game design is going to be like, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like, what do you
Exactly.
personally want to see from like these change in the maps?
Well, right now it's definitely set up for to serve a purpose, right? Which is the single map wars. And I think they work well to kind of like deliver satisfying gameplay for like that's for a war that takes place in one map. So um, it's not a mistake that they are the way they are. That's what they've been made for. Going to one world, it's not going to make sense for them to for all these like separate maps that are not really that don't really need each other, right? So I think going to a multi map gameplay, it's going to be cool to have stuff that you need from another map, right? It's like, this map is not self sustaining. This, you can't take Faranac without taking the eastern border or something, where you can't you want to create which is what will be natural. What will be in the natural world is that if you can't cross those mountains 200 kilometers east, you're not going to get to the coast. That's the cities in the coast are totally safe. If the mountains, you can't make it through the mountains. So I want to see maps that work with each other, right? To deliver gameplay that involves the entire world, rather than all these one-off experiences.
I think you were specifically talking about that the island, that western island on Faranac Coast, that serves no purpose outside of it being like a balanced map, right? Just balance for like a single region, right? So I think stuff like that is going to change, right? Speaking of Faranac Coast, I think if there's one map that's going to change the most, it's going to be that one, right? So that's been a tough one.
Faranac Coast has been, it's kind of like a love-hate relationship, because I know a lot of people hate it, but and it creates a lot of stalemates. But it's actually
a lot of people like it. It's like
a lot of people like it too, and I like it because it's it kind of highlights an aspect of the game that doesn't come out often. So you get to see what happens when small little a little bit of just kind of grind attacking doesn't work. You have to, what are you going to do when you literally need your entire team to get on boats, organize, it's like herding cats. It's crazy. The times we played on those maps, it's like, it's like near impossible. But then when you do it, when you can get like a significant number of people on a boat and you get across, it feels like some crazy, it's an experience you can't have anywhere else. So it's like, okay, obviously, some stuff is broken with the map, but in some ways it does bring out some really cool, unique features of Foxhole. So it's
yeah, no, for sure. I think one of the big things that you can expect that's going to change is the layouts of towns, like structures. I think that in terms of which towns have which structures, which towns have manufacturing plant, which towns have vehicle factories, so on and so forth, it's going to change a lot. Not every town is going to have everything, and it's not going to be like the checkerboard towns that we have right now, where like every other town is basically the same, and there's this perfect pattern for the sake of balancing for a single region. There's going to be a lot more like one-off towns, and some pretty extreme cases at certain parts of the world, right? Where say a lot of your production might come from certain parts of the world, and it's not, production is the same in all regions, right? That's the kind of stuff we're going to push into, right? Like, we're going to push to things feeling more unique, parts of the world feeling more unique, and less just this. I think like the uniformity is not going to work, right? The uniformity that we have right now is going to change a lot, and I think that's something that is going to be really jarring for a lot of players. But I think it'll be good, right? I think it will feel.
I'm excited though. Yeah. I think it's gonna, because right now, Matt has a lot of has a lot of challenge, making a map feel like making regions of the map feel unique and different, when at the end of the day they kind of have to be the same. It's like, oh, here's like a town with 3 factories or whatever, 3 production facilities. So here's another town with 3 production facilities, but this one is a little different. Matt has to go and put in the extra effort to kind of create some differentiation. Whereas I think if you have a map where there is like only one factory or something. Like, there's like the fact that there is a factory in this town is a huge deal. That creates uniqueness on its own, which is
Yeah,
which
exactly.
I'm excited. I'm really excited to
Yeah. I mean,
see how that's going to work out. Yeah.
speaking of the one-offs, like beyond the structures you see in the game now, we want to see really unique stuff in the world, like
Uh huh.
even like one-offs, right? Or maybe like two
Right.
like structures that you only see like 2 to 3 times in the whole world. Where if you're able to capture these strategic structures, then they'll give you some sort of an edge in the world, or
Uh huh.
some sort of an edge in the war,
Right.
like some sort of like at the brainstormy levels, like capturing like a missile silo, right, and like repurposing it for some kind of use in the war, and having being able to claim that missile silo would be huge, right? Like and there might be only one in the
Yeah.
world. There might be
Right.
only one in the
And
world, right?
it's so important who controls that, right? And but yeah, that would be.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see that.
Right.
Excited.
Or, another wild idea would be having like an airstrip that could speed up your logistics, right? And I think it's stuff like that we're going to push into. I mean, there is one thing that we are going to be that is more solid with these structures, and actually have some cool concept art that we start working on, is the communication center. And I'm just going
Uh
to
huh.
switch to that right now. This is a
Nice.
pretty early concept, but if you capture the communication center as an example of these one-offs, structures in the conquest world, is you'll be able to intercept some of the map intel from the enemy, right? So we always
Mm.
said that the information in Foxhole is going to be as important as the combat, and this is going to be one example of that happening, right? And capturing the communication center is going to be huge, right? And if there's only
Yeah.
one of them, or if there's only two of them, then it's going to be a big deal. So capturing towns is not going to be the only focus. Um,
Yeah, I'm
so
excited. Yeah, I'm excited about that also because it kind of opens up the game to more more branches in strategy. It's like there's no like, oh, okay, just keep going, like capture. It's like, oh, like this time the wardens really want to focus on communication, like logistics, and capture factories and the communication tower, and that's the angle that they're taking. That's going to change how that war plays out from a previous war where like they might focus on water vehicles and boats. Water vehicles are boats.
well, well, I mean, I think one of the things that we really want to try to do is to make sure that the it's not only like you're not only going for towns. Like it's not just this. Let's go for the next town. We got it. Now let's go for the next town. Let's
Right,
go for the
right.
next town. Like we want to make sure there's other strategic objectives. If there's a bridge, as an example, that can be
Mm-hmm.
really important because there's no other way to cross um, for like miles, right? Capturing that
Right,
bridge should feel significant as
right.
capturing a town,
Like
right?
like if you want to bring in if you want to bring in tanks to Fairnack, oh, then you gotta capture the
Yeah, and
bridge.
that's one of the things.
Stuff like.
See, right, but one of the things, like we have bridges now, but one of the things that we can't do right now because the regions are so small, and they have to be kind of like perfectly balanced, is that we can't say this is the only bridge for like 100 miles, right? We
Hmm.
can't do that. Like we have to provide all these little balancing things just to make
Yeah,
sure that a war could play out. But imagine there was a bridge that existed where you could have really only crossed there. Then if you want to bring over tanks, you need that bridge, right? Things like
yeah,
that, stuff like that is what really excites us, right? Like
yeah.
that's the version of Foxhole that we want to work towards, right?
Uh-huh.
Not these like smaller region, kind of perfectly balanced like wars that only last for maybe like a few days at most. Like we want these things to feel really long, and for there to be many different strategic objectives. Like you can go on a lot of missions that and not just one type of mission, right? So I think that's I think that's some of the cool stuff. And then if you think about trains and how trains would fit
Hmm.
into this picture, You know, I don't know about you, but that's really
Yeah,
that gets me
yeah.
that makes me want to
Mhm.
skip my holidays and start working on Foxhole right now. Like just like literally thinking about how trains would fit into
Yeah,
this type of one world just gets
yeah,
me that's the whole reason why we even started this project, right?
yeah.
Is for that sort of thing. And I mean, speaking of trains, right? Like you know, a lot of people have been asking about trains, and you know, we haven't like officially announced it or anything. Just like how tanks, we didn't officially announce until like much later. But it's one of those things that's always at the back of our mind, and it's one of those
Hmm.
things that I can't picture personally us finishing Foxhole without having trains at some point.
Right.
It's not an official announcement, but it's just, you know, we thought about tanks for a long time, and eventually tanks happen. We're thinking about trains. We've been thinking about trains for a very long time. So
Yeah.
I guess we'll just leave it at that. And then I
Hmm.
think the other thing I want to touch upon with World Conquest is um, sort of how we see how we want structures. They build the variety and sort of the progression of structures that we want to see in the future, because right now there's this sort of like all or nothing um, type of progression with structures that kind of results in wars being really short. But one thing that we want to try to do is to make sure that structures like they kind of the things you're building kind of change over time, right? Um, is there anything that like I mean we've talked about stuff, right?
Hmm.
We've I mean what's the thing? Okay, let me ask you this: in terms of the progression of structures, what is it that you want to fix? Like, what is it? You know, without necessarily talking about anything specific, just sort of at a high level. Like, how do you want to how do you want to see that? You know, in terms of how structures change over time, how you build them.
I I think from from our discussions as well. I think what excites me and us like the most is kind of making it more you know I guess more monumental, right? Like obviously that comes with a adjustment in the pace. Um, but when you capture when you capture a factory or when you capture a thing, in in a real war it would be a monumental like it would be a turning point, right? And sometimes in the in its current form, a factory can switch hands like 2 3 times. You lose one, you get another one, you get you take that one, you blow up it's just they are a lot more disposable, right? um
Yeah, that's a good
yeah,
word.
yeah, it's I think if we could make them feel uh like, oh, like the entire team like gets excited because like now they have a tank factory. Oh, now the entire team gets excited because they can do this other thing. That's um and the enemy team is going to be they're going to be shitting their pants because oh my, like if they start rolling out tanks, like we're done. So we got to focus our efforts on sabotage. We got to focus on efforts on taking down that bridge, whatever it takes to stop that at its tracks, right? So I think I'm talking about tanks, but I'm not. I don't only really want to focus on just tanks.
Yeah, you're talking
Tanks
more
is
at the
not
high
really
level, right? Like you're
yeah,
using
like
it
the
as an
high
example.
level, like yeah, as an example, right? Like I think being able to having these monumental goals in the world rather than these disposable, like kind of like non-important, like, oh, okay, yeah, took a factory, yeah, gave a factory, whatever, this town, that town, doesn't matter, right? Like it wouldn't be like that in a real war.
Yeah,
You want to I think it would be really awesome if we could capture like a little bit of that, like um you know, the monumental feeling of a turning point in a war, some strategic thing that changes
right.
the war field. Yeah.
I think another thing that we probably want to see is like the longer you hold a town, in theory, it should become more like fortified, right? Like harder to take down, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, like,
yeah,
and I mean, we don't want towns to flip so easily if they have been fortified, right? I think that's the kind of stuff that we want to see,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Which is also more realistic, right? It's if you allow the enemy to occupy a territory for a long time, it's theirs, right? You're not going to take it back easily.
Yeah, cool. So I guess in terms of One World, we have been hearing from a lot of people that you want to know when it's coming. It's our top priority, and in January, we hope to have some sort of a step, a test where you can at least play the conquest, right? At least play the conquest parts. We really want to do that in January. So that's what we're shooting for. So we're hopefully one way that this could happen, might not be for certain, is that we're gonna be able to set up this conquest server quote unquote, because it'll actually be made up by multiple servers, but it'll be a single world, and then everyone will be able to jump in, play it. It'll be functional, but it will probably be really early with a lot of quirks, and then we'll see how that goes, and then we'll keep making it better from there, and then at some point we'll make the full switch over to so that the whole game is only one world, right? But I think it'll take a bit of like experimentation, and I think throughout January and February is probably when that's going to happen, right? So
Yeah.
moving on to question and answer. So this time, instead of doing a live Q&A, we asked for you guys to post your questions ahead of time. So we've chosen some questions to answer, and for the questions that don't get answered, I actually want to answer all of them in some way afterwards. So I might do that in like a follow-up post, or maybe another video or something like that, because there's a lot of really great questions and we're not going to have time for all of them, right? So we'll get through some of them now, and then I will try to answer the other ones afterwards. So I guess starting here from Steam forums, Stranger Days asks, what, if any, plans can you speak of regarding the research center? Will we have a tech tree for each of the 3 current buildings? So will we see special items not available on Skirmish, such as commands that could augment buildings when submitted to them? I'm not sure what that means, but will weapons, vehicles, equipment be available in a tech bundle, such as half-track HMG and HMG ammo at the same time? So I guess first of all, the current version that we've thought of for the tech tree is that all things will be on the same tech tree, right? So you won't have like, one tech tree for vehicle factory, one tech tree for the weapons factory, and so on and so forth. It'll just be one tech tree, and I think that that may change in the future if there's more content, but because of the amount of content we have right now, we want to make sure that the tech tree feels substantial and like meaningful choices are actually made. And I think our biggest goal with the tech tree at the end of the day is that you can come in and you can see where things are at. You can contribute to the tech tree, and then you can leave and come back the next day or even 2 days later and be like, oh great, now the tanks are unlocked because we're working towards that. A big thing we're seeing from Foxhole right now is that you come back 2 days later and the whole war is finished. You don't even know what happened. Like, everything's gone. You can go to the war correspondent to see what happens, but I guess to be fair, in the campaign it is a little better because you can at least see the map and sort of see what the result of the war, right? But the biggest thing that we want to see is the progression actually happening inside the war. You coming back 2-3 days later and being like, this is how things have changed. This is how I helped. This is how things have gotten better, or this is how things have gotten worse. And then you can jump back in and you can keep fighting that same war, right? So to that end, we want the tech tree to be big. And I think just to sort of answer a whole bunch of other questions regarding the tech tree at the same time, in terms of how you submit to it, we really want the tech tree to for it to be much like how tech works right now, where you kind of vote with your tech parts, right? So if there's two branches, let's say like at a high level, you're choosing between like it's just an example, but if you're choosing between the half track and the tank or something like that, right? Then you can submit tech parts to either branch, right? And then whichever
Uh-huh.
branch has enough at that point, then it'll unlock that thing, right? And in terms of bundling things, I actually think that's a good idea because it's a little strange to allow people to unlock a heavy machine gun but not the ammo for heavy machine gun. So I think that makes sense. So next question from AFK AFK Puz
Octopus?
Puz
Octopus?
Puz. Um,
Octopus?
I actually we already answered that question. But there was another question that was asked: do we plan to revamp the squad system? Is that something that you want to answer? You want to answer, Alkas?
Sure. Yes, we do want to revamp the squad system. We want to add to it. We want to make it. We want to work. We want to make it work better for everyone. The specifics we don't really have yet, but we do want to. I guess some of the things that we want to focus on are making it so that first of all you can communicate more effectively with your squad. You can and also being able to making it actually beneficial to have people on your squad in the first place, not just by forcing, not just by saying, oh, the more people you have, the more you can, like, some hardcore number, but actually because of the communication tools, because of the usefulness it will bring. You will want to you will want to have more people on your squad, and you will want to seek squads that are working on goals that you think are worth your time,
Right.
and making it a better experience.
Yeah, yeah, and I think
Yeah.
talking about the goals, one thing that you've always wanted is making the goals much more visible if you choose to do so, right? So that people can
Yeah.
kind of like opt into your mission.
Right. Yeah. In terms of yeah, yeah. There's definitely when you're trying to, like, coordinate people in Foxhole right now, you're pretty much flying blind. You have to kind of be constantly badgering people on chat and be like, hey, who's doing this, who's doing that, who's got that thing, who's it's extremely inefficient right now. If we could come up with a system that makes that streamlined, right, where you can be like, oh, okay, these guys are working on this, this is their progress, that they reported. This is how long I can, they said it'll be ETA 5 minutes, right, whatever. Oh, it's like, and then as a new player, you could also be like, oh, okay, I want to join a squad. Oh, okay, these are the things that people are working on. Oh, okay, this is this some sort of, like, attack is happening in 10 minutes. I should go show up there and get ready, right?
Yeah,
It's right now, you see a mission objective on the map. You don't know when it was put there. You don't know if anyone is even going to it. You don't know. You don't really have any um,
well, it's funny because
visibility.
I think people try to do that with the crude mission objective tools that we have. Like
Uh-huh.
I think when people were organizing the landings on Farinac Coast,
Hmm.
people were using the mission objectives to say things like, "Hey, we're leaving here in 30 minutes,"
Yeah.
or we're all people come and gather here. And as crude as it was, it worked. But if we can make that more like effective, right? Like try
Yeah.
to it's very difficult sometimes to figure out what the correct type of tools to make because you can make something and people totally won't use it that way. But I think sometimes a good strong hint is look at what people are already trying to do, right? Like look at what people are trying
Yeah.
to do with the crude stuff that they're doing right now already and try to surface that and make it not so crude, right? But don't go and invent a new use case that might just be not even used at all, right? So um,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, next question. By Triple L from Steam. Which superpower would you take if you have a choice, and why? Right? I thought this
Well,
was one interesting question that I really wanted to answer, which is why I included it, right? Um, I think for me personally, I wish I could freeze time. I think that is the biggest. If I had one superpower that I could have, and I'm answering this with respect to Foxhole because I'm assuming that's what you want to hear, right? Um, is I wish I could freeze time because a lot of the design problems often require time, right? But when you're
mm,
running a real time game that is constantly online, people constantly playing it, you constantly having to maintain it, you don't have time. You have to plan as you go, right? And I think if I could freeze time and spend 3 years coming up with thinking about all the odds and ends and corner cases and everything, that that would be great, right? So, um,
I'll s- I'll agree with that. Although that's we've learned that like you can't plan everything out perfectly for
that's
Foxhole.
true.
It
That
just
is
on a
true.
whiteboard, right? What you plan on the whiteboard
It could it could
does
fall
not
down.
happen.
It could fall down in
It,
5 minutes
once you put it
after
in the
it
hands
goes
of
live.
once you put it
Yeah,
in the hands of like actual people, it's a completely different. Everything changes, right? So I think freeze time, but then also iterate.
yeah. No, no,
You can't get anywhere without iterating. So,
I won't argue with that. Um,
but yes, I will also like time, please.
all right. PCX Gulu. I heard you asking around what other versions of Foxhole we might like, Mark. Do you planning on giving us servers we can use mods on, or do you even work on a little extra project? Um, I don't know. What do you like? I think we've always thought about this, uh, because um, we've we almost see this as like something that we really want to try to we really want to try to perfect in the long run, right? And we see this at the. I think this is one of the things that okay, like I really want to answer this because I really want to hope that you guys can understand where we're coming from. A lot of times I read a lot of comments and questions, which are totally valid comments, totally valid feedback, but they're really focused on the short term, right? Like they're really focused on, oh, is Foxhole dead because there's only a few hundred people playing it right now, right? And it's viewed through the lens of like, okay, if this isn't, if we don't have thousands and thousands of players, then we're just gonna give up and we're gonna take whatever sales we had and we're gonna run, right? But it just always seems really silly from our perspective, and because this is a long term thing for us, right? Like we like it doesn't matter as long as there's like if there's like 10 people playing, we're still gonna keep doing this, right? We're still gonna keep
Yeah.
doing this until we're just for some like
Well,
the
Foxhole,
reason like
I kind of see it as like, the Foxhole is the icebreaker ship, right? Like it's, we got to focus on we got to focus on opening up the path, and then,
exactly.
once we find, land, once we feel like we've reached the destination, then sure, like, I would love to see, different takes on this concept, right? But we're trying to like solve so many different problems at the same time. If we're trying to like make a Western mod and a Roman mod and a space mod at the same time, like I think would just drown like right where we are, like we wouldn't be able to move. So we got to get the icebreaker ship, through the thick of it, slow and steady, and then once we're somewhere, then we can look back and say, hey, like maybe maybe this we can reuse this path, right? So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think the simple answer is that we are totally excited about it. But we don't feel like we've earned the right yet to do that.
yeah,
I think we had a lot of work ahead of us, and we want to focus on Foxhole, make Foxhole what it needs to be first, and then once that's done, then we feel okay. Maybe we've earned the right to think about some of this other stuff. And I think that I think we have thought about doing other things, right?
Hmm.
But I think maybe we jumped the gun on some of those thoughts, and we really, if there's one lesson that we learned this year, is that we don't want to jump the gun. We need to get back to just really making sure that we get this like world conquest stuff done. We make sure that we get Foxhole on track, and then we'll worry about some of those other stuff, right? So, um,
Right.
in the second part of that question, quickly, what are your plans after the final release of the game? Will you deliver more content afterwards? I think we really want to just keep working on it in some form. Even if we do end up working on something else, I think we always want to support Foxhole. We want to support it for as long as we can.
Hmm.
And I'll actually pull a couple of more questions because we're running out of time, but we have a long list. But let me just see. Okay, I think this is an interesting one from Lurkus.
Hmm.
He posted a really long question. I just kind of extracted one of the sub questions out from there. But it was, what about the idea of a weather system in game to hinder the teams, not in terms of damaging the player or vehicles, but to slow down the player or create obstacles? I brought this up in the past, but it'd be nice to hear you guys on the dev team have a discussion about it. And he posted a link to a write-up, which I don't have time to link to, unfortunately. But I know you've been interested in weather, Alkas, so I thought maybe this would be a good one for you to answer.
Um, well, I mean, I think that was something that that's come up. That's come up a few times. I actually like his idea of instead of damaging, just slow it down, right? Or just straight up obstacles. Because damaging does feel. Well, I mean, I guess if it's really cold, then you would kind of be getting damaged, but you'll be able to do something about it, right? Um, yeah, I think we've definitely talked about that. Especially from the perspective of kind of um, adjusting or kind of like creating a natural way to kind of dictate the pace, right? If you have like winter time where like everyone has to bunker down, and everybody has to like you're pretty much like base building and stockpiling, production like within your like established like safe zones, and then once the ice loosens up or something, suddenly there's a burst of gunfire, there is a burst of like action, and then whatever happens during that time, like you can kind of you do what you can, and then winter comes again, and then you go back to you go back
Kind of like Game of
go
Thrones. Is
back
that what you're saying? It
almost.
sounds
I
like Game of
wonder.
Thrones to me.
I know it was also kind of I was I guess definitely in the early days as well, when servers were suffering from nighttime flips, right? Like you'd be a warden, you have like 9 out of 10 towns, and then go to sleep, wake up, and colonials have like flipped it completely over, right? And if you had weather in the system, you could say, oh well, in nighttime, like not much is going to happen because it's winter, and uh, people are not going to be able to move as fast. They're not going to be able to attack as efficiently. So it's I we don't want to make it artificial, just like a really artificial system, and we still do want to capture the idea of like an ongoing 24-hour war, but well, there's definitely something we thought about. So who knows? I mean, if world conquest we see some major flaw in team balance, or major flaw in wars flipping over, I don't we'll probably talk about it again. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. No, that
Yeah.
sounds. I know one of the nights that I hopped onto the Discord, and I don't know how the idea came up, but it came up. A lot of people were actually very, very receptive towards it. So it's something that we could think about.
Hmm.
I'll do another two questions quickly
Hmm.
from Reddit. Um, There is Honey Badger OG 1337. What will the future of team balance look like when World Conquest is released? Will the system of bonus resources for underpowered teams be continued? So I I don't think either of us like the resource balance thing that exists right now. It's just the minimal thing to slightly make things better. It's awfully artificial and I mean it makes some sense. Like we've kind of like our excuses was less people out fighting and there's more people that's in the manufacturing plant, so therefore you get a higher yield from your scrap is sort of the MacGuffin that we've kind of used. But
Yeah.
we're not huge fans of that, and I think in World Conquest we want to find other ways to try to address that. And I think we like to think a lot about what happens in a real war, right? And I think in a real war, the more progress you make, the more territory you own, logistics becomes harder, right? Like you have to, the amount of effort that it takes to supply your front increases a lot when you expand your territory. Whereas if
Yeah.
your territory is shrinking, it's actually easier for your supply lines, and that creates this natural balance, right? I guess that's more about like balancing what happens when you have more territory and not so much the team number balance. But I think for the team number balance, we like to find similar solutions to that as well.
Yeah.
Try to think about what the natural
Well, I mean,
solution is, right?
in the real war, in the real world, if you have if you have 10,000 strong like men, that you need to cross the continent, you need probably 20,000 people up in the back supplying those guys, right? So there's definitely increased logistics that are needed to support
Mm-hmm.
a large army,
Yeah.
right? So and when you have a large army, I think we have in history you've had there've been occasions where people you have more men than you have rifles, so you just get like a buddy system. Like you just hang out with this guy until he gets shot and then pick up his rifle and just keep going, right? It's there is definitely problems in the real world wars, where having a big army is not always the greatest thing. So I think we could look into some of those further and think about it. Team balance is just such a hard problem because it's an issue that exists in real war, right? You can't argue that like every war is balanced. I think for me personally, as long as there's some sort of balance at the beginning of the war, what happens after is kind of a natural, product of what happens in a war. Like you like it's motivation, right? Like so your soldiers like morale is a real issue in Foxhole, which is great. It's just that's not something we put in artificially. When people are getting beaten down, they leave, right? And when in a real war, if your guys are getting shelled, they're gonna get shell shocked. They're gonna get they can't fight as effectively, right? Your 10 men against their 10 men is not the same. Your 10 men are gonna be barely worth 5 men if half of them are trembling to hold a rifle. So how do you solve that without creating a lot of artificial systems? And then even when we tried the artificial system to hard limit balancing on the servers, it unexpectedly the servers were dying, right? Like the
Right.
population death, and
Yeah.
we've talked about that many times.
And I think another thing is that I think we're also trying to look at that problem from different perspectives, right? Like everyone's looking for a fix, but you can also look into how to make that fun, right? So if it is imbalanced, how do you make that fun, right? Because I mean, there are entire games that are made that are based around the idea of a final stand, right? And I've actually just read a thread today somewhere. I don't remember
Right.
where, but I think someone was actually saying that since the surrender system was put in place, they haven't been able to experience the the last stands that they used to be able to experience, and they were like, that's
Mm.
I feel like that's missing. That player was saying that they feel like something is missing now because the fun they had in making the last stand, it's no longer there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think that it, it it sucks for a lot of players when the war gets into that situation, and I've been in so many of those, so I totally get it. Like, I'm not saying that
Yeah.
it's not a problem that doesn't need to be fixed. It certainly does, because it sucks when you're down to just a few people, and everyone is kind of like demotivated. But but what if there was more of a reason to make a final stand? What if making a final stand actually meant something, right? Um, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that we also want to try to take a look at too, right? Uh,
Yeah. If it was more fun to make a last stand, right? Like if it wasn't just kind of like a crapshoot, right? That
right.
yeah.
And final question by Elogicat on Reddit. How will the home base be part of world conquest? Will soldiers be boated? Could you please elaborate on that? So how players are going to get across? I think that the majority of the time, you will walk up to a structure, like you will walk down to something like a ferry type structure. This is in the more of like a final version, might not be the first version, but you walk to a structure like that, and then it would bring up the world map, and then you'd be able to click on a region that is either contested or claimed by your side, and then you will be able to spawn at the hometown there. So this is almost exactly like how it worked in the previous World Conquest. Instead, it was kind of chosen just from like a menu, from the main menu, instead of actually like you having to walk down to to the docks. But another way to kind of like enter the conquest that we want to support is actually physically driving a boat to the edge of your home region screen and being able to send the boat over there,
Yeah.
with everything intact on the boat. So if you wanted to make like in a raid to a, a, a enemy claimed region, you can do so, right? So that's our goal. All this stuff might not be there in the first version, but that's what we want to work towards. And I think that's all time we have for questions. So we're going to wrap this up, but there's a couple of things I want to mention before we wrap it up. One is regarding PAX East. This is a little bit further off. I believe it's in
April 8th.
April. Wow, you knew that exact date. That's
Well,
crazy.
because yeah, I just looked at it.
um, PAX East. If you are going, talk to Crazy Flying Chicken and let him know, because we might want to try to organize a get together for the Foxhole community. So talk to Crazy Flying Chicken. Let him know if you are going to PAX East. And the other thing I want to mention was the community stream. So there is a community run stream that happens on the opposite weeks of the dev streams on Thursdays at 8 o'clock Eastern time, I believe. So that'll be happening next week, and I'm going to post a link to that as usual. There you go. So be sure to watch that. And another thing is the next dev stream is going to be happening back on the regular schedule in the new year. So in 2 weeks from now, on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to be back to our normal dev stream schedule with normal dev stream setup. It won't be as crude as this. It'll be in our studio, and it will be more like our usual dev stream. So we'll be back on track. And then finally, this Saturday, as a reminder, is the Let It Snow event. It's a special war games where there'll be a special game modifier that you'll find out about on Saturday. So yeah, look forward to that. And on that note, I think we're done. I'm glad everything held together. Thanks for bearing with us in this very informal, about hopefully interesting to you guys stream. And we will see you.
I think people were asking us questions on chat, but it's really hard to also read chat and do the thing at the
Yeah.
same time, guys. So I apologize if
Yeah, if you have any more questions
yeah.
yeah, if you have any more questions that you want to be answered this week, feel free to post in that Steam forum post about this stream, and I want to do a follow up something, whether it's a post or video or something, and I want to answer more of the questions because I was reading them all and I'm like, I want to answer them all as much as possible. So post questions there. I will get to it at some point this week. And yeah, anyways, that's it. So see you guys in the new year. Hope you guys are having good holidays. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.
See you guys.